Hey friends, welcome to the Empowered Homes Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to grow strong families by connecting church and home. And today I am joined by Brad and Liz Flurry. Welcome, y'all.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks for having us.
Excited to have y'all. We're in our continuation of our series on marriage, and we're going to be talking about pursuing your spouse the next couple episodes. But you guys have some really great insight as we dive into the continuation of pursuing your spouse. Because a lot of times we get, how long have y'all been married?
Go ahead.
23 and a half years.
23.
You got it. You nailed it.
So
I was right. Yay.
15 and a half for us. There's times where that time continues and we lose track of pursuing your spouse. So we're going to look at principles today. But before we jump into that, our audience or listeners that don't know who you are, share about how you met. I want to know the story.
Go ahead, Liz.
Yeah.
So are we going all the way back?
All the way. 10th grade. Algebra
grade.
class. Go for it.
Algebra 2.
Yes.
I got in trouble for talking too much.
Imagine that.
And so my teacher told me maybe I should move and sit by people who didn't talk back with me. And so I moved and sat by this really cute, quiet boy. He's really, really cute.
Yeah. A disappointing day in 10th grade for me. Yeah.
Hey, it is worked out very well.
It worked out well.
Very
right?
well.
And then, so became friends
Yes.
and then started dating our senior year of high school.
Mm-hmm. I wore him down.
Yes. Yeah. And, we, right after high school, Liz went to college and I left a couple of weeks and went to the Marine Corps. And so we dated long distance for a little over 3 years and then got married and spent almost 2 decades in the Marine Corps and getting to travel all around the world in the U.S. and have 2 kids. Tell them about our boys.
So Hunter is a senior in high school and Drew is a sophomore. So we're getting ready to transition to a new phase.
Yeah.
One in college. I'm not ready. I'm going to miss him too much, but I'm excited for his new adventures.
Yeah.
So.
And so, in reality, Bobby, we're 3 years away from empty nest, and within that is why this topic is so important, right?
Absolutely.
If we're not pursuing each other and just focusing all on kids, which kids are important, then they leave, the grass isn't green. We haven't watered it. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are younger listeners with young families. They're like probably jealous, like you probably have more freedom now that your kids are older. But the reality is for them, they need these principles too, because a lot of times our schedules are so crazy with young kids that we fail to pursue our spouse the ways we should. And so I'm excited to jump in. I'm excited to have you guys. So let's go right in. What are the basic principles of pursuing your spouse?
Really for us, Bobby, it was, if you look at any area of our life, let's say your finances, your health, any other habits, there's no area of our life that if we neglect it, it will grow. Right. But somehow we may think unintentionally, as you just mentioned, because of the busyness of life, is that the things I did when we started dating to pursue her heart, to make her notice me, to make her fall in love with me, to say, man, I want to marry you, and in the newlywed stage, if we quit doing those, we look up later and our marriage is not where we want to be. And so for us, as we sort of, honestly, we looked at a lot of older couples in our church and said, hey, you've been married 30, 40, 50 years, right? Help us understand some basic principles. And what came out of it was not just, how to have a happy marriage, but was this idea of pursuing your spouse. And so as we narrowed those down, we sort of came up with 3. We like numbers and systems. And so it's helped us along the way. And the first is really principle number 1 is what?
It's not about you.
It's not about you, right? And so here's what we mean by that is the first thing when you're pursuing your spouse for you to know is don't keep score. Don't keep score. What do you mean by that?
So if I go out and have a night with my friends, then it's not like you got to go last time, so this time it's my turn. Or you got to buy a non-essential item, so now it's my turn to buy a non-essential item. It's not like taking turns back and forth. I mean, obviously you both want to do that, but when you keep score of, you were really rude to me yesterday, so I'm going to be rude back, or I'm going to keep a mental tally of every single time. That's not going to encourage a marriage for all seasons. That's not going to be something that's going to grow with you, because that's going to be something that is going to kill the roots of what you're building.
Right. Marriage is not 50-50. Right? It's not. Sometimes it's 80-20, sometimes it's 70-30. And so it's important to know that, right? But so if even before we talk about some of the other things, if I am pursuing Liz only with my benefit in mind, it's not going to work, right? Like, you know what? I brought her breakfast in bed, or I did this for her. Now it's my turn. So I sit back and wait. Right, is one of the individuals in our survey is an older couple. Is they said the secret to the success of marriage, it's a race to the back of the line, right? Is I want to continually put my spouse first, and so especially in a moment when we talk about a few more tangible things, it's important to know, right, that it's not about you, right? When I pursue Liz, it's about her heart, her beauty, and our relationship.
So it's not about you, and the keeping score. I think we fall into that trap all the time. It's hard, but what is even worse, I think, and I've seen this in couples, I've seen this in men that I've counseled throughout the years, is if you are keeping score, eventually you start keeping secrets because you start to, I'm going to buy this on this card that she doesn't ever look at because I know she's going to want to go and do this or whatever. Right. And so how do we, what are the how do we say, okay, we're not going to keep score? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I think it goes back to putting your spouse's needs in front of yours, right? And that there's an honesty part of it. But I've seen, and we can talk about even later, when I pursue her with my full self, she reciprocates, and so it's a beautiful thing. It's not where I'm doing it to get something out of it, and so also it is the unselfish nature is encouraging your spouse, encourage them. Hey, go out with your friends, do this. Hey, today is all about you. How can I serve you today? And so those are at least tools for us that's been help us not to keep score.
Well, and then when you do these things and you're filling up someone's tank, then they're automatically, it's going to be an overflow. Like whatever you're putting in is what's going to overflow. And so if you're putting in love and attention and pursuit, that's what's going to overflow onto your spouse just naturally, because we're all human beings. And when you're filled up with goodness and joy, then you ooze it out to all those around you. Yeah. And I think too, being a person's cheerleader and putting them first, if you put that perspective in your mind and you're like, man, I'm so proud of you, I love you, I want to encourage you, it's something, it's like when you drink water and they always tell you, oh, you're going to feel like you need to drink more. It's the same kind of concept. You're going to feel like this feels good to do that. When you're following the Lord and your heart's desire, which your spouse, it feels good. It makes you feel better and you want to do it more.
So pursuing your spouse, first principle, it's not about
you. Right. So I think if we understand that, then the next two can definitely be easier, right? And the second one for us has been that you focus on the whole person, right? And humans are complex, right? We're made up of all types of different body parts, but also there's certain just core pieces of us. And what do we mean by this is mind, body, and heart, right? And so for the guys listening, I know you want me to jump to the body part. We're going to get there, but it's not always just about that. And one of the quotes, once again, from some of the people we were talking with, is a couple that have been married over 60 years. And I'm going to read you, Bobby, what he said specifically about this. He said, when I pursue her, this is his wife of 60 years, when I pursue her, all of her beauty becomes more beautiful, right? So her beauty becomes more beautiful. And so what does that look like? Well, I think first of all, when we say pursue the mind, right, is we're like, well, what exactly does that mean? Is what does your spouse think about? What are what are their dreams, right? When Liz lays her head on the pillow at night, what comes to mind, right? And when she wakes up in the middle of the day. So what do you think? How do you pursue my mind?
Well, I think when you have those conversations and you're talking together, then you're getting to know the other person. And so even though Brad and I have known each other
for a long time,
really long time, since almost 30 years, then you kind of think, oh, well, I already know them. But that's not true, because we all grow, we all change. And even if it's talking about current events, even if it's talking about a situation going on in our lives or with our kids, you're getting to know them and their perspective. And you are not going to grow closer to somebody if you are not talking with them. Just like when we encourage people to have a quiet time with the Lord, if you don't spend that time with him, you're not going to get to know him better and know his heart. And so part of knowing his heart is knowing his mind. And so ask him about his day. Ask him how he feels about things. And being willing to go first. Vulnerability breeds vulnerability. So me being vulnerable with him will encourage him to be vulnerable with me. And so going first and being like, I love you and I care about you and I want to know what makes your heart beat, what makes makes you tick.
How does listening play? I got a story that just happened recently.
Go ahead.
But how does listening play into that mind too for y'all?
Very important.
Yeah, it's very important. It is, we joked earlier about Liz being moved in 10th grade over to us. She processes and pursues with words, right? Yeah. For me, I'm okay. If this podcast was silent, I would be great. Right? And so within that is my nature is not to verbally communicate a lot. So listening takes a lot out of me, but I've got to show her that I listen to her. One of the things, Bobby, you've taught us is to be present. Right. And so when she's talking and she's sharing, we say pursue her mind about things she wants to learn or areas of her life she wants to grow in. I've got to put the phone down, turn the TV off. I've got to show her. We'll talk later about time, attention, and affirmation. But man, I'm giving her that through the way I listen.
Yeah, in your mind. So my story with me and Jen is she was complaining about something that was going on with this thing, and she was telling me all the reasons why this thing she's involved in isn't working, and she's tried and blah blah blah. And I just was like, okay, I hear you. And I went, here's how to fix it. And I went full blown DEFCON explosion.
Man, you did a good job.
I did a great job. I was like, I fixed it. And her response was like, I wasn't asking for you to do any of that. I just wanted you to hear me. And I was like, oh man, I blew that one up. Yep. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. But it still caused friction in that moment, but it recognized, like, for her mind, I understand she likes to process just like y'all were talking about. And so to go pursuing the mind is sometimes it's not saying anything. It's listening what's on their mind and what's happening, but also hearing it too and being receptive to that. It's really good. So mind and body.
The next is, I'm going to jump to heart before I get to body, right? So I'm going to go to heart is, the questions we ask this is if your spouse didn't have any obligations, what would they do? Right? If they didn't have to work where they had to work, if they didn't have the family obligations, what would they do? Right? What fills their cup? What gives them joy? Right? And to ask that, like, I know, because as long as we've been together, that Liz, what her heart needs is she needs to teach her mentor, right? Is because she had great people in her life that poured into her. So she's got to be involved in some sort of those relationships. If I don't pursue her by allowing her means to do that, right? A couple of years ago for Christmas, I gave you, what was one of the gifts I gave you?
He gave me a gift card, and it was a Visa gift card, and he wrote a super sweet note with it, and it was all about me going out to coffee with people and going to lunch with people and just giving me a financial token that said, what you're doing is important. Like, what you're doing is meaningful, and giving me purpose in that, and like just saying it out loud. Because it's one thing that I know I love him, and I know I'm proud of him, and I know I'm his biggest cheerleader. But does he know that? And so sometimes we really need to remember to say it out loud. And so he did that by giving me a gift and writing words that put something that's very close to my heart. Gave it like a 3D value right there. And he did it in front of our children as well. And he made sure our children saw that and encouraged me and blessed me in front of our children by saying, what your mom's doing is got eternal value.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I think it's knowing your spouse's passions, and then just within the confines of the realities of your family and your marriage, how can you support that? Bobby, I see you do a good job of that with Jen and her friends, right? You're not keeping score. You're encouraging Jen to go on trips with her friend because that community is a passion of hers. And so by doing that, you're pursuing her heart. And so there's just, there's a lot of ways for you to do that. It's hard to give specific examples without knowing what that is, but it's asking those questions and then providing the freedom to, for your spouse to do that. The next is the body part, right? So the guys that you can look up now and pay attention. But men, I want you to know this, right? Here's what we found is men, your wife wants you to pursue her physically. And you'd be like, no, she doesn't. Yes, she does. But she also wants you to pursue her mind and her heart. And so there's multiple ways to do that, right? And so physically, it could be not just straight intimacy. It could be the hold hands, right? It's how do my body language when I'm around Liz? What does that look like? How do I treat her? And so there's multiple ways to do that. But I think one of the most difficult things, Bobby, that we saw from surveying a number of people, a lot of guys, said they did not feel pursued by their wife in this area. Right. So, wow, that's tough. And I wrote a couple of things, and I'm going to share. As I said, husbands, let me ask you this: what will a wife do for a man that truly cherishes and pursue her in a world where she's probably taken for granted by her kids, judged a lot by her friends, maybe even ignored by most of the world? But when she comes home to a man that she knows that truly cherishes her, what will she do for that man? Right. And so guys, by nature, I joke, is you may think immediately to pursue the body, and you should. That's part of a healthy relationship. But it's the whole package. Right? It's the whole package. You can say something?
I think that when you are having these conversations, because it is an important conversation to have, and sometimes I think the other person may not know how you feel. Like, I need to feel like you're pursuing me. Sometimes that's a conversation that actually needs to be had out loud, not just I assume she knows that. Right. Or and maybe you're in a season of life too where you don't realize you haven't been doing it. There's times that I've thought I had done something. Well, the last time I did that was months ago. No matter what it is, we just get caught up and busy and kind of forget the most important things because we know this is our family, and sometimes we take that for granted and we don't make it the priority that we need to. And that's why pursuing our spouse is so important, and dating your spouse is so important, whether you are 2 years into marriage or 23 years into marriage or 50 years into marriage. But like you said in the beginning, continually watering that grass and cultivating that garden, because pretty soon in our house, it's just going to be the two of us. And if we're looking around like, I don't really know you anymore, well, that's going to be a rude awakening. Yeah.
And so guys, if you're thinking, how do I pursue her body without just the intimacy stuff? It's also through your words, right? It's me reminding Liz that she fulfills my every desire. Right, and it's me building her up in that way that's helping me pursue her. But the big picture, I think, Bobby, is in all three of those areas. Is if Liz is a triangle, mind, body, heart, and I only pursue one of those two areas, and that other side is gone, it's no longer a triangle. So it's no longer what it was meant to be. It's a different shape. It's a different whatever it may be. So she's no longer whole. I've neglected that part. And so if we understand, okay, hey, number one, it's not about us. And then number two, I need to pursue all of her, because naturally we're going to pursue the thing maybe that we find easiest way to love, but it's not theirs. But to pursue their mind, their heart, and their body. Yeah,
and communication, what you said. Because there's times where, even me and Jen get stuck in that of like, hey, are we good? And going through and just have those little check-ins. Sure. Because there's times where the neglect, maybe I'm more over on this side of the triangle or on this side. And, it's not about keeping score or finding balance. It's about understanding the whole person. That's huge. So number 3, what's the third?
We say it this way. It's hard to explain, but just use all the ingredients, right? And so, Liz loves to bake. I'm more of a grill guy, but even though it is you got the ingredients in front of you, use it. And so what we say with this is the first ingredient, we sort of give you 3. The first is time, right? When we were dating, engaged, even newlyweds, one of the ways we both pursued each other is we wanted to be together. right? Man, especially we dated long distance. I did some crazy stuff to get back to Texas to just see her for 24 hours and then come back, rode in the back of a truck for 12 hours. I mean, it was just things that I showed her. Man, I just want to spend time with you, right? And then I think as life happens, and especially if you're watching and you've got younger kids or even kids that are teenagers, is you can be together but not be together. We can be in the same living room on TV or phones and not be together at all, right? And so the first thing is making time for the other person. And so it goes back to, it could be date nights you mentioned earlier, but it could be doing chores together. It could be on a walk we've done, but it's just making time in your schedule to be together.
He took me to TJ Maxx to get pillows, and then I went to eat barbecue with him. So it's
beautiful.
Man, it is
a fancy Friday night when you're in your 40s. But hey, it was something that he was going and doing something that I wanted and needed to do. And then, of course, I love barbecue, but so does he. And so then I was like, hey, well, I picked what we did. Now, where would you like to go eat? And it was just... Then I think we even picked up some dessert and brought it home and sat on the couch and ate it and just enjoyed that time. It doesn't have to be something, I have to get all dressed up. I think I was wearing, leggings and a sweatshirt when we did that.
But you've got to intentionally make that time, right? If you don't schedule time for your spouse, it's not going to happen. Bobby, I love you and Jen do Friday day dates, right? Because your schedule's great. So your date isn't the day, right? Where you're like, you know what, Jen, you mean a lot to me, and we're going to spend time together, and here's what we're going to do. You're going to go antiquing and get barbecue, right?
Yep. Most of the time.
Right, exactly. But you've shown that, our life is a little crazy and hectic, but we're going to make time for that. The reason we start with time, because the other two ingredients we'll talk about, is if you don't make time, these don't matter.
Yeah.
Right? And so the next one we talk about is attention, right? She's like, okay, what do you mean by attention? When we were dating, we were newlyweds, there was not a lot that could draw my attention away from her, right? Now, a ding of a phone, the ESPN on TV, my kids, work, all of those can take my attention away from her, right? Is when you look at statistics, and this is not always the case, but when people stray outside of marriage, when they're asked, why did you do that? Is quite often, majority of the conversation is, my spouse showed me no attention, right? And so it wasn't like, maybe my spouse didn't love me, they didn't care for me. They knew those things. We intrinsically know our spouse loves us, but my spouse showed me no attention.
I think that, too, goes back to that verbally expressing, I'm your biggest fan, I'm proud of you, I love you. This is something that we need to say regularly and show in our actions regularly. Just like if my kid has a game or performance or something, I'm going to go be there front row and I'm going to cheer for them because I want my kids to know their mom, their dad, we're your number one fans. But how often do we do that for our spouse? Whether it's praising them for some accomplishment they've had at their job or in an organization they're a part of, or if it's just, man, you're such an amazing dad. I'm so proud to be your wife. And how you handled that situation with our kid, like, I wouldn't want to be married to anybody but you. Nope. And it's something we think, and we assume the other person knows, but we've got to say.
Verbalizing it is key. That's huge.
And so I think as a couple is, truly asking yourself, hey, what competes for my attention of my spouse? Right? What competes? And then being able to figure those out and say, hey, some of those you mentioned are healthy, maybe my kids or other things. But then within that is what do I need to get rid of?
Yeah. And being intentional. And one of the things with attention, it goes back to time, is I've tried, not every night or not every week, but I've tried to identify an evening, because I'm in charge of bedtime. That's my thing. Jen's like, I am shutting down. I am done. You go upstairs. And there's times where I'm upstairs for an hour, just, doing all the routine and talking with the kids or whatever. And so I've been trying to be more intentional of doing it in 10, 15 minutes so that I can come down and give Jen more of my time and attention. And we'll watch a show, and she I came down the other night and she's like, that was fast. Like, usually takes longer. I was like, yeah, I wanted to come hang out with you. And so it meant a lot for her that I was intentional with giving her my attention, and I pulled a little from the kids, and they'll survive. It'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last part of it, ingredient, it's going to sound similar to attention, but it's intentionally different, is affection, right? So think about it this way, is I can give somebody my attention, but not my affection. I can pay attention to a guest speaker that may come to the church. I'm not giving them my affection. I can pay attention to the TV, but I'm not. So how do I move from just attention to affection? And this is where knowing your spouse, right? And so it's not all physical, right? It may be a hug. Liz knows I'm a big hugger, right? And so we say physical touch is important to Brad. It's not always intimacy. It is like, I'll tell her, like, I've not got enough hugs for you today, right? And you're like, man, big guy, you do this? Yep, I need a hug from my wife. And so affection is not only that. It could be sending a sweet text. It could be, writing a card and putting it in Liz's purse. It could be sending a thing of flowers. It could be spending time for her, showing affection as, hey, sit on the swing and have a conversation with me, right? So now I've moved from attention to affection, because affection shows a couple things. It shows that I care about you and I'm safe. Right. And so that's, if you put all of those together, so you've got the time, attention, affection, you use all those ingredients, your spouse is going to feel pursued.
It's so good. And you mentioned how that changes and shifts over time.
For sure.
Me and Jen, like, recently had a conversation, like, early in marriage. And I think I didn't know how to be affectionate. Like, I just didn't have that growing up, and it was just awkward. Like, I'd have to tell myself, like, I should probably hold her hand in this moment, like, where it's natural. Where now, like, she's more not affectionate, but, like, I want all of it. Right. And I think it's because with the kids and all that. And, like, so we've shifted. We had the conversation of, like, hey, I need more now than I used to. And she's like, well, I didn't know that you're just going to change on me. And so we talk through it, and you have to. So time, attention, and affection, the powerful ingredients for us to add. So just recapping, it's not about you, right? It can't be about you. You got to focus on the whole person, mind, body, heart, and then using all the ingredients: time, attention, and affection. Pursuing your spouse is these principles. For those who've been married for a long time, you're like, yeah, I've heard all of this, but my hope and challenge of hearing you guys is not just hearing it, but putting it into practice, and the power that it can have to reignite. You may be on the end ropes of your marriage. This could be the thing that reignites that passion for each other. You may be newlywed. Some great tools to start using now, so that later on you continue to grow. Well, thank you guys. Before we go, I have to put you on the spot. We want to get to know you a little bit more with 3 questions that we're asking all our couples as we go through this. So keep it PG. Our audience is mostly parents, but they may be listening in a car with kids around. So question number 1, what's something, and Liz, you'll go first. What's something your spouse wears that you absolutely love?
He has some dress shirts, and he will roll the sleeves and the button up and slacks or jeans, and he'll wear it to church, or if we have a date night. And a couple of the ones I'm thinking of, you don't even tuck in, but some of them you do. Those are really nice, but I also just like it when he's just wearing his athletic shorts, because he works out a lot. So
long sleeve shirt, sleeves rolled. You got it.
Tips.
Right?
Yep.
You want me to answer the same one?
Yes. Same question.
She's got. She always dresses really nice. She dresses. She has the fashion in our house. Me and the other 2 teenage boys don't necessarily care, but she's got some. You'd say like yoga pants, workout pants.
Okay.
Big fan.
Big fan.
Big fan.
Okay. Okay. Question number 2. This is for you. You can't talk about the other person. You may know the other person or can help them remember this, but this is just for you. Start with Brad. What is your biggest fail in the kitchen?
Biggest fail in the kitchen?
You can help each other.
I know hers big time.
I know. See, you can't do that.
I know what he wants me to say.
And I cook a lot, Bobby.
I know.
I cook a lot for us.
Yeah.
I bombed a few months ago trying a new French toast recipe, and was going to add a dash of vanilla, and half the bottle went in.
Okay.
And it didn't turn out well. Probably not my biggest fail, but probably most recent.
Yeah, that's good. Fair enough.
Hey, it's your turn.
He's gonna
Go ahead.
He's thinking of
Quick, rapid
sloppy
fire.
Yeah.
sloppy Joe under a bun.
Casserole.
It's a casserole. It was in our early days of marriage, and I made it numerous times because it was
That was
inexpensive.
the last time.
Yeah.
And the last time I made it, he got sick. I didn't get sick eating it. Only he got sick. So
Bro.
I think it was a stomach virus. But
3 days, 72 pounds lost.
it was so bad. It was so bad.
Yeah.
But it's an excellent recipe. It's just that he won't allow me to make it anymore.
Ever again.
Yeah.
Ever.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. This one, Liz, we'll start with you. You got to think about it. So I'll give you a moment. But just if you found a genie in the bottle and you got 3 wishes, the first 2, both of you can just wish whatever. But the third wish has to be only for Brad. It has to be something only for him. What would you wish?
I would probably. This is going to make him sound old, but I'd probably wish for a lot of his arthritis and stuff to be taken away because
I was hoping you would say a 1,000-acre high fence ranch.
Well, I was thinking you would have less pain for the rest of your
I
life.
would not care.
Okay. Well, I thought maybe one of our first wishes together would be that, but he's not going to pick one near a target. So, yeah, I was thinking something that would give you ease in life. Because your military experience has battered you up some.
Okay.
That's incredibly sweet. And I'm laughing at Eric because we've already done this, and that was Jen's exact thing for me, that I wouldn't hurt all the time.
Wait. Come on, man. We're not that beat up.
I know, but I was trying to think of something thoughtful for
And
you.
why did Jen not ask for you a 1,000-acre high fence ranch as well?
I said
Do
the
our
exact
wives-
same thing.
Do our
I
wives
said,
not
what
know
about
us?
what about land?
Come
Yeah.
on.
But you said there was 2 other wishes.
I would
I
wanna buy
assumed
dirt.
that was
Yeah.
one of the other wishes. It
Well,
was a given.
Don't assume. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would wish she would get to have her dream job, focus on the family, adventures, and Odyssey. She's wanted to live that out her whole life. The other 2, I got to wish for all the other stuff. That's what she would get to do.
I loved Adventures in Odyssey. I wanted to be a voice on it so bad.
It's a good wish.
Yep.
Good wish. Well, guys, thank y'all. Thank you for just giving some insight for couples listening, just about marriage with you, getting to know you, but also these principles for pursuing your spouse are invaluable. So thank you for your time
Thanks,
today.
Bobby.
Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.